having this content effort you're making right now that you may feel like is a waste of time, 5 years from now, that's going to be gold because you're going to have a captive audience that trusts you that you can speak directly to for free.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs.
All right, Elevar Summit version 2 is in the books. Elevar Summit is our customer conference for Elevar. Our first one was just 6 months ago. We just held our second one at the end of April here in Charleston, South Carolina. So Nate, I've gotten this question from many founders in my SaaS Academy mastermind and boardroom, and majority, I would say 95%, if not more, of businesses, they don't run customer conferences. So the question that I get is, how did you do it? What were the necessities? What went into it? Was it worth it? So that is going to be the first part of today's episode, is breaking down a bunch of those pros and cons, and I'll share the numbers behind it and the stress and the what we did well, what we didn't do well. So Nate, you came down, you've been to both conferences, again, 6 months apart, as a maybe as an objective attendee. What are your thoughts on number 2?
Yeah, I think the second conference, what stood out to me most was the sequence of speakers, the presentations, and kind of the cadence of how we would go into a very deep conversation. We would spend about 45 minutes there and have a break. Then you would be ready to stand up and network. So you'd be able to work those muscles a little bit. So the whole day you're engaged, but you never felt like you're just being bludgeoned in one area. So I think we talked about this at the conference. I think you did a really good job of pulling people deeply into a conversation about data or about customer acquisition or segmentation, personalization. And then we would pop out and be able to have conversations amongst ourselves, which, we'll get into today. I definitely learned as much in those side conversations as the folks who were speaking on the stage. So from that perspective, great. Venue, I know a lot of thought went into that, and we'll definitely get some of those details here shortly. The detail or the venue was much more engaging. The time of year, it was also, I think, everyone who doesn't live in Charleston, which that's a destination. It was really nice for someone like me to come down out of, cold mountain, and, we're just on the edge of spring and getting down in 80-degree weather, and it's not too humid yet. So it's the venue was great. And then the sequence from just an attendee standpoint was very digestible.
Yeah. And just to touch on that point, we intentionally this year for the main day, so it was a day and a half, we would do 2 sessions, break, networking break, 2 sessions, networking break, longer lunch, 2 sessions, break, then 2 sessions. And that actually was a common theme I heard from others for this particular one, which is, thank you for adding in time for networking, because obviously we had sponsors. But man, yeah, you're right. You can't just sit there for 4 hours straight, just with so much content and knowledge coming at you, and you can be overwhelmed pretty quickly. I thought to kick things off, I would just do a quick definition or overview on the types of events, because Elevar is 7.5 years old, and we've been quote unquote doing events for a long time. But just in the last 6 to 8 months, we've gotten into our own events. And I think it's a sequence, or it's a stage of maturity as a company grows. And it's just the TLDR on it. From my opinion, it is 100% worth it. And I would do it all over again. I probably would do it a little bit earlier than when we started. But the first way to quote unquote do events is you just attend. You are a fly in the wall attendee. So for Elevar, if you're thinking the world of Shopify, that's a couple years ago, I went to the Grow New York conference, and I just went as attendee. I don't even think I could go into the conference. I was just floating around at the different networking events around that. Number 2, the next step up would be you are exhibiting at a conference. So the next year after Grow, we exhibited. So we purchased a booth that was set up for us. So then we could have a team. So it was myself, our head of sales, and head of partnerships. So we had a presence there inside the show the entire day. So that's bucket number 2. Bucket number 3 is you speak at an event without sponsoring. So this is in the Elevar Summit. Taylor Holiday from Common Thread Collective, they weren't a sponsor. He was one of the first people I reached out to, because in the theme and the art of putting together the panels, or just the sessions, I knew that he would be amazing for the attendees. So that's an example of speaking at an event without sponsoring. Number 4, speak at an event via sponsoring. So this is, hey, I'm a company, I'm a SaaS company. I want to pay money to both sponsor, be a sponsor of the Grow New York or others, but I'm also getting the opportunity to speak on stage, either solo or with other folks. Bucket number 5 in this would be you sponsor or you hold your own micro events. There are dinners. So the Chew on This group, they have different dinners, and I can, as a SaaS company, I can choose to sponsor and have our name there, and we get discussed or promoted to the attendees, as well as having our logos. Or you can do your own golf or ski outing, which is becoming a little bit popular, of just doing a destination type of micro events. And then you have bucket number 6, which I break into a 6A and a 6B. So the 6A is you hold your own event, but the goal of the event is to make money. So it is a event to pull a profit. 6B is you hold your own event, but the primary reason behind the event is not to make money. It is focused on quality, community building, etc. So out of those 6, maybe 7 if we count the 6A and 6B, Nate, if you were just to stack rank, what do you think would be the biggest ROI? What stands out to you? So what are your top 3 that you would invest in, or that you would think would be maybe provide the biggest ROI?
Yeah, and to back up, what I would be wanting an event to accomplish for my brand would be the recognition. So I go out and I meet people who would have otherwise never heard of me. So, obviously a form of advertising, and I'm making the decision of what's the most efficient way to do that advertising. So if I'm looking at this, I think the best approach for me would maybe try to be a speak at an event without sponsoring would be my first step into this. Sometimes as an event attendee, if someone's speaking as a sponsor, you start to wonder, that authenticity. Is this person here because of merit? Like Taylor, his presentation was incredible, and he was like very engaging. And I learned about Common Thread Collective, and I never would have otherwise heard that company. So I gained a lot of respect and appreciation for his company, just seeing him do his thing. So if you do have a great topic to speak on and you are an engaging presenter, I think getting in as a speaker for an event would be a great brand move. I've heard you speak a ton on these micro events, the big payout for those. So I would probably look more to have those dinners, those sponsored dinners like you talked about, to be able to interact and actually have real conversations with folks over a shared, controlled environment for a couple hours, versus like a skiing thing where, you see each other and then you're gone a mile down the ski slope and don't get to have a lot of deep conversations. So I think those would be the 2 for me personally. Seeing all of the logistics that y'all had to go through with hosting your own event, it would definitely be daunting for me to have to get into organizing an event and coordinating a large event where I'm having a few hundred people like that showed up for the Elevar conference. Those are my thoughts on the events, and you've lived through those. So what are some of the realities of those different options with getting involved in events?
Yeah, before I answer that, let's go back to Taylor. So you might be thinking, I agree. If you can have the clout to have someone reach out to you to ask, like, hey, do you want to speak at our conference without having to pay, which has happened to me in the past, you can't ask for anything better than that. So how do you get that opportunity? So I'll use Taylor's example, then I'll use my own. In the past, Taylor built an audience. He is an expert. He is a wizard around profitability, just numbers when it comes to e-com businesses. He had his own brands, obviously with Common Thread. They work with, I don't know how many, but quite a few 8-9 figure brands. And he shares amazing content. It's like, I would share a lot of my content I would share over the years would be my face in the bottom left corner and just going through Google Tag Manager and tracking, and the people who are interested in that, they would be drawn to me. And same thing with Taylor with his content. It's his face over spreadsheets, and he's going through all these nuts and bolts of just how to make your business better through numbers, through better finance. And that was the reason why I was like, I'm not even going to ask for a sponsorship, because the value that he is going to bring to the attendees, which is very top of mind today with a focus on profitability for businesses, is it's worth more than a 5,000 or whatever he would have to pay to get on stage, because the attendees, that was a universal topic that everyone there could relate to. Of, do I need to make more money? Do I need better OpEx numbers? Do I need better margin, et cetera? That was something that he could bring to the table. So for me, where it came, the ask for me a couple of years ago, a few different times where it started, is again just sharing content around a very deep niche, like tagging and tracking Google Tag Manager. It's, yeah, do you want to just come and share your expertise? So that is an avenue that you want to pursue, just not to be corny here, but you need to start creating content, brick by brick, of just sharing, building that content, being the expert in your niche. And then over time, as other people try to do that and they fall out because they don't have the discipline to continue, you will become that expert and thought leader, and then these opportunities will show up on your plate.
And what's the real outcome? Like, you put in all this time, obviously building an audience is great, and we'll talk about that later. But Taylor gets on the stage, he's looking like a thought leader, he's an expert in his field, he's providing value. Like, what is the payoff of becoming a speaker and participating in these events and flying to these different conferences? What are you wanting to get out of it, and what have you gotten out of it?
It builds trust, builds authenticity. It demonstrates that you are an expert and you know what you're doing, and that is going to be a fallback to your company. So for me, when I've walked off stages, you will have people that come approach you and they immediately want to start talking about business. Hey, how can I work with you? So those are, you can measure those, but there's the surround sound impact of, everyone might not be in market for your services or your business today, but if you build that surround sound and they just continue seeing you and hearing you out there, when they are ready to come into market and potentially do business, or they need what you are offering, you will be top of mind. So very much, to me, the way I look at it, this is personal, is it is a top of mind awareness. And if someone a year and a half down the road, they're like, hey, I remember this guy from this conference. I really liked him, trusted him. He knew what he was talking about. That's a win. And that literally happened. So an event I did about 2 years ago, met a founder of a brand, and they weren't ready to do business with us yet, but they came back and now they're a customer. But that was like a year and a half later. And that wasn't just one time that happened. And so there's other sorry, you had the other question about the finances and what went into the Elevar Summit. So do you want me to get into that, or did you have another?
That's what I was about to get into a little bit. What are we looking at if someone says, okay, I buy it, events are going to be a great use of my time and our resources. It's going to be a great way to build this equity, short-term and long-term. What am I looking at expense-wise?
Yeah. So what I've learned in being in a few different masterminds of other folks who have built conferences or events around their business, is it's okay to start very small and just have 20 people, and then 20 goes to 50 people next year, maybe it goes to 100, and then 200. You don't need to be like, hey, I need to be at 10 million and have 2,000 customers just to potentially have 100 people to come show up. You can do something high quality with a small subset of customers, and frankly, those are probably better because there's just more networking and it's not a mass crowd you have to work through. So for Elevar, when I literally made the decision July 12th, we were exhibiting at the Grow New York conference. It just hit me for some reason of, you know what, we should be doing our own. We should not just be paying to go rent real estate at someone else's event where we're tucked in the corner and we're just not there. And some events that are focused on profit, like if the focus is on profitability for an event, the quality goes down, the quality of attendance goes down, the quality of networking goes down. So what I did at that point is I hit up Paul Rogers from Vermont, who they had just done their first conference the year prior. And I said, hey, Paul, am I crazy to think that I could pull off an event in October, which was less than 90 days away, because I want to do this? I want to do this. And he said, no, you're not crazy if you can solve for these two things. Number one, get a venue locked up. Number two, get speakers locked up. If you can do those two things, then everything else will fall into place. Yes, it's going to be hard, but those are really the two main things that you need to lock down, because speakers are a big draw to a conference, because that's when you start getting the sessions and panels locked in that will again draw people that want to learn more about that. So as we transitioned into the first year of once we said, let's do this, I immediately found someone that I knew through a local network here in Charleston who had done event planning. Shout out to Rochelle, and said, hey, do you want to help us with this first event? Like essentially come on as a contract event planner. And that was that. There's the great book, Who Not How, I think by Dan Sullivan. So read that book. But it was, I'm not going to be able to do this. I don't know anything about event planning. I don't know about food and bev and AV and all that. But she did, and it wasn't like a job description that I created. I just started at the end of what are the outcomes. So I created a Notion page and I just wrote down, I don't know, 10 to 20 things like what are the outcomes I'm looking for in this event. I want everyone in the event, no matter where they're sitting, to have a very clear view to the stage and the slides. I want everyone to walk away and say that the food and beverage around it was excellent. You know, there's 10 or 20 things I just outlined. So I was very focused on and what I had in my head and the vision of it, and just wrote that down. And we discussed it like, hey, are these things that you feel like you can execute against? And she's like, yeah. So we fast tracked through there. We found the venue, locked in speakers pretty early, and just went about it. Now the finance side, at that point we were still bootstrapped and we didn't have a board to report to. So you and I were chatting about it, and it was like, hey, we're gonna do this. It's the rough numbers, thinking it's probably gonna cost $100,000, and we hope to get $50,000 to $60,000 back in sponsorship revenue and ticket sales. So it's going to be a quote unquote net loss. However, the investment is in the community and getting our customers there and getting our partners there. And again, just building surround sound for the brand. So that was year one. Again, I'd love to hear what you were thinking back then, and just thinking like, man, what is this guy doing? He's he's setting himself up for failure.
No, when you first announced it, I was thinking, well, this will be achievable. Brad can do this. And then as the weeks went by and we progressed up to it, when you're like the flight stewardess for me. So when you were getting nervous about hitting our numbers, that's when I started, calling anyone in my network, trying to find someone to come and all this. So there wasn't a lot of concern from a cash flow standpoint, because I know you always make decisions that ultimately work out in that area. So I didn't think you were going to put the entire business at risk for an event, but I did trust the outcome and the surround sound, like you talked about, and the butterfly effects of hosting an event. That's something I was thinking about while you were talking there. So then you talked about, you write a blog, you have a tweet, that's content. You have these events. What are you planning to do with the most recent Elevar Summit from a content standpoint? So, someone can understand the benefits long after your event ends of being able to, show this thought leadership. So how are you planning to use that?
Yes, I'll pull that into some of the failures or learning lessons from event number one that we tried to focus on for number two. The first event, we did have a videographer on site, and we did live stream. So live streaming is super easy today. So if you were holding an event, just live stream it. We use StreamYard and then just plugged into YouTube and LinkedIn. So last year in the October event, we created an event on LinkedIn, and then you can just promote that out to LinkedIn and have people sign up for it. And then they'll get notified as the event goes live. So we had that to get the raw audio and video recorded. But the venue we were at, because we did choose the venue pretty late, the quality of the visual, so there's so many shadows. It was an old historic building, which is an amazing building, but it is not made for an event where you are live streaming presentations and panels. So the quality of that was bad. Not to mention the AV team running that, I don't think that is their core expertise, is doing live audio and just cutting between the speakers and the slides. So that was also very janky. So that was we walked out of that and that was like an F or a D. And we got comments from folks, the first one just saying like, hey, the video wasn't the best. We had a videographer, someone that was walking around the first event as well, but we didn't have much of a direction. We didn't have the outcomes like, hey, here are the outcomes that we're looking for from you being on site for a day. We want to be able to use some of your video that is going to potentially look a little bit better because we can pan across the crowd and use that in addition to, or as an overlay to marketing content, whether it's clips, whether it's the full length video. So we really didn't use any of it. We used it to make, one highlight video for the event, but that's it. So we pulled that forward as a learning lesson to the second event, and we worked with an amazing AV team. I think you watched part of it through YouTube, and the audio and video was pretty stellar. Is that right?
Yes. Yeah, it was like the same clarity of being there in person. So it was great.
Yeah. So just that part, just asking the question to an AV team, do you have experience doing on-site, but also ensuring that it looks great for the live stream? So that, I feel like we nailed it. We went from an F to an A. And then the second part with the videographer on site and a photographer, we had both this time, and also got very clear on, okay, during this time block, we're going to do customer testimonials with a videographer and the photographer. And during this time, we want to do, we want to have you going on a room that way we can merge and pull content together. But in general, we didn't really we used some audiograms and clipped out some things from the first summit, but we left so much meat on the bone because the content there was awesome, because that was one of the biggest takeaways from attendees was your content was great, better than most events, if not all events that they've been to. But we just did not do a good job planning on how are we actually going to amplify this. So turn one 40-minute session into 400 pieces of content. So for this one, we have that capability now. We also have the benefit of new tools like Opus Pro and Cast Magic and some of these others that can help you automate a lot of that slicing, dicing, reusing. But so that was learning lessons for number one. That was it was a big black eye, I would say, in the event for reusing that content, and what the plan was going into the second one.
Yeah, and what I also noticed at the event, you've got a lot of attendees and you've got a lot of sponsors and you've got a lot of VIPs. I know that was a huge point of emphasis for you at the first Elevar Summit. We just didn't talk as much about this particular summit. How do you make sure that the people paying to sponsor the event, the speakers flying in, do you try to do anything special to make sure that those folks are seeing some kind of great ROI as well?
Yeah, great question. And this is one of the stressors that I had. I won't project on others if you are doing your own event. But as you mentioned a little while ago about us talking about the numbers of signups, especially the last one, it was my first time overseeing an event, and it was very stressful. My stress level was very high up until the day of the event or the day after, and the majority of that stress was around: are people going to sign up? Of the people that signed up, are they going to show up? Of the people that show up, are they going to be the right people that our sponsors want to meet potentially? And number four, are there going to be enough of them to make sure that the sponsors have an ROI? So that was the same for this year. And just I talked to Jimmy from SendLane because they do a bunch of events. And he basically said the same thing that I was feeling. He's like, yep, they're always stressful. You're always going to be worried if people show up, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it's a natural part of holding events where, you want it to go well for both the attendees as well as the sponsors. So we did a few things this year with sponsors, stage presence, so putting them into the right panels, add-ons such as for all the food, so just having placards or postcards everywhere, the napkins printed, shout outs to sponsors before and after, included them in a ton of emails before and after. But that it is certain. The way that I think about it is 50% of our attendees show up, 50% of the signups show up. How could I still make sure that we as a team do everything that we can, go way beyond, above and beyond of what we are entitled to contractually, to make sure the sponsors feel like, okay, this was a hit for us. Again, even if they didn't meet 100 people or 100 prospects at the event.
Yeah, and we're so far into this episode that's specifically becoming about event logistics. I'm just continuing to write down questions here. So the presentations were very well rehearsed, and that's something as well I noticed from the second summit compared to the first. So what went in, or maybe talk a little bit about that as far as presentations and evaluating what folks are going to present on their slides, like how do you make sure that you know what someone's going to talk about, if it's going to work with your overall strategy for content for the whole event? How did you go about nailing that down?
This was my baby was the content, and we decided after the first event where I think we packed 8 or 9 sessions into one day. So it was back to back to back to back, and we had a couple breaks here and there, but as we got into the afternoon, that was some of the feedback in our post-event survey to attendees. They were like, "Hey, the content was great, but there was so much of it, and we can tell the afternoon was really rushed because you were behind because people were going late or beyond their time, the 45 minutes or whatever we had dedicated. That just if they felt like it became too rushed. So what we did going into this year was we said, okay, well, if people are traveling to Charleston already, what one day, like a 1 day conference, you might as well just make it 2 days or a day and a half to make it worthwhile. So you're not flying there and flying back. And we had people flying from the West Coast and Seattle and overseas. So let's add on a half a day. For the first half a day, we did workshop style. So we wanted to be more interactive. So it wasn't talking panels. And we took the 3 minutes before and after Elevar that are very common. So conversion rate optimization makes sense. Business intelligence and data analysis makes sense. The AI talk makes sense with Gene, which was by far I think the most popular based on feedback. And then the video, so video review of how to create amazing shorts from Brandon from Javi and Tyler from BizCap. So they were intentionally meant to be, okay, let's be a little bit more hands-on, let's show. So we were doing live prompts on the AI talk. Brandon and Tyler were doing live video reviews. So we had collected video ads from our customer or the attendees before and sent them ahead of time to these two so they could review and provide feedback. So that was the day one of Went Into It, the workshop style. I'd love to hear, before I get into day two and what went into that, what was your feeling or perception just watching the crowd and talking to people, how they felt about that workshop style, more hands-on day one?
Well, the first presentation where you had the live voting and scoring and input from the crowd on every single question, I thought that was incredible. And set question number 20, like way into the presentation, there was still nearly 100 folks voting and providing their input. And then they made a game out of it. So that gamification of a presentation, I thought that's the first time I've witnessed that. And I mean, folks are like racing to their phone trying to answer so their name could be put at the top of the list of, Josh. I remember his name was always up there as one of the best and fastest and smartest. Building in that recognition was really cool. Definitely gave that workshop style of feel. So that definitely started the whole workshop day off in a great tone of like, we want your input. You guys are going to be necessary in order to make these presentations better. So I thought that was a great move. I don't know, was that you or the presenters that came up with that live voting and feedback loop?
Yeah, definitely was not me. It was them. It was shout out to Adrian and Anthony on that one. Let's go to day two. So since this was not a event for a quote unquote for-profit event, it was an event for our customers and partners. I started by looking at what are the questions or problems that our customers are facing? So what type of tickets are coming in? I talk to customers all the time. What are they asking me? They're asking me like, hey, what's so-and-so doing? Or what's this brand doing about this problem? So that's the easiest way, not only for content or panels at an event, but that's the best way to find content to share on LinkedIn or whatever the app of choice is just what are people asking you about? What are their problems? So the process I took, and again, I was very probably overprotective of this because again, I wanted to make sure it was the right content with the right people match and it nailed. That added stress to our team because we had changes even going up to a week before the event. We're shuffling things around or shuffling orders of presentation around. But again, it was all in my eyes, it was trying to make that flow work. So some of the pain points we were hearing, or I was hearing coming up with it, obviously profitability. How do we get better with our finances? Trying to find new customers where now that CPAs and everything, all the friction that's happening around tracking and whatnot. So try to find those topics that were big enough that could resonate with 70, 80, 90% of the audience. And then it was, okay, who are the experts both customers and or partners or non-partners, but who are the experts, who are the practitioners who can fill the seats that I know will do a great job without me having or someone else having to create the deck or all the questions or all the topics for them. So that's essentially the process that I took was, what are the problems our customers face today that we can solve? How can we distill that down into topics that can resonate with 80% of the audience? And then who are the people that I trust, that I know are experts, that can nail it? And that is a game of you are moving chess pieces around. So it's again, if that is something that you don't like to do or you think you won't want to do, don't let that just go to the wayside, because what you don't want to do is just have seats filled by sponsors or people that just, they are not the best ones to be talking about that particular subject. Because the downside is you don't want to be known as a conference where your content becomes very mediocre, because then people will stop going.
Yeah.
And there are events, I won't name names, but some of our attendees I was talking to, they were sharing like, yeah, we used to go to these, this event XYZ all the time, but it just, the content became so overwhelmed with sponsor and generic, and it just wasn't authentic. So they just stopped going. And that can be a very, very bad trend to create.
Yeah, because if it takes a lot to get someone to click on an ad, how much more valuable does your content need to be to get someone to leave their family, leave their city, get on a plane,
Yeah.
get out of work, and all the effort that goes in with that? So yeah, if your event is not going to be centralized around providing whatever value your attendees looking for, just don't have the event.
Yeah.
Just find some other way to communicate with them and to advertise them.
Yeah.
And I've got two different forks here I do want to ask about. So the event center was filled with a lot of attendees, but there were also a ton of folks on the back wall from Elevar. So from that perspective, your CEO, you've got a large team of people. How many of those folks, percentage wise, are you pulling away from their day-to-day duties to come and, serve and help and work together and collaborate at the event? How do you go about thinking about and approaching your team management? Is this a culture building? Is this I'm using my team to just serve the employee needs at the event themselves? So how did you approach that?
How can I create leverage that is going to benefit the company at large outside of just the event? So it is, yes, we're flying people in to help us with the event, but can we also leverage their time together to have the sales team come together and meet? So that the first event, Shane, Abby, and Evan, they all came in and Shane was holding sales meetings with a team. The testimonials. So can we have the team, while the conference is going on, can they get with customers and record testimonials, video testimonials that we can pull in? The culture part, that again, we're a remote company. We've been remote from day one. Do I think as a CEO or a business owner, do I think that bringing people together to build relationships is going to be beneficial for them as a person, but also professionally as they are working together? Hell yeah. So just that alone, it's testimonials, sales team meetings or department level meetings where they normally don't meet in person, building culture. So those are all things around the event that it's a value. It's the icing on the cake on top of the event. And you bookend a day before and after, and then it really, really makes it a powerful, maybe not direct ROI on your financial spreadsheet, but yeah, you can list out like all the benefits that come from that. And partners, our partnerships. So you have partners in here. Hey, let's have our whole partnerships team and have a bunch of meetings and get with our partners to build and foster stronger relationships.
So your own personal time. So let's assume that someone coordinating an event is going to have the ability to hire someone like a Rochelle to be the captain of the ship as far as planning the event next
Point guard.
The point guard. Yeah. So you still played a role, but your duties as CEO did not just disappear while you're planning for this. So how did you go about planning your week and structuring your week so that you could give what needed to be given to pull off a great event, but also not let things slip from an Elevar CEO side?
Yeah, so we had a weekly 1-hour meeting that was recurring. And then when it got time to start having the panel prep meetings, just time blocked 2 blocks in my calendar, Tuesday and Thursdays, that could be booked into. So it was trying to trying to minimize the scatter shot of this time we're having this on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday. So try to time box those into specific areas to minimize that. But again, as for me, it did add an additional level of stress. I was joking around with somebody, might have been you, maybe a few others, but
We never
it's like,
joke.
man, I haven't woken up in the middle of the night stressing about Elevar in like
Yeah, that
3
was me.
years. And I was like, I've woken up more in the middle of the night worried about business than I have in a long time. And it largely was from the summit, from those things I mentioned earlier of just worrying, like, are people going to show up? Do people like us? Do people like me?
Yep. So setting expectations, if you're going to do an event, there's going to be some great outcomes. There's going to be some evergreen content. There's going to be some day one benefits as far as being that pillar and that beacon within your vertical. You're going to be looked at as an expert. So there's
Yeah.
going to be some great effects there. But on the negative side, you are going to be introducing a lot of chaos and pressure and a very like time focused, time intensive kind of event that's like, this is going to happen on this day, and people actually have to pick up and move their bodies in order to attend. So that is going to create
Yep.
stress.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. So if you are thinking about starting a customer conference of your own, just, shoot me a message on LinkedIn or DM me on Instagram. Happy to answer any questions. But it's great. I look forward to our next one. It's a little bit harder. It's definitely harder than what you might think, but it's worth it. I think it's also provides the high you get coming out of it is also better than what you might anticipate.
Yeah. So if you're thinking of getting into events on any level, we spoke about whether attending one yourself, trying to speak at one, hosting these small dinners or golf or ski outings, reach out to Brad, find someone who's done this before and pick their brain, because as fellow entrepreneurs, we want no one to fail and we want everyone to succeed. And I'm sure you've got 10 other people in your life that you could talk to pull off a great event. What else
Yeah.
you got, Brad? Anything for this event focused centric episode here?
No, do you want to transition to 2 or 3 learning lessons that apply to really all of us listening? So just 2 or 3. We had many founders and business owners at the Elevar Summit presenting and sharing a lot of their own learning lessons and tips. Let's jump into some of our rapid fire learning lessons.
All right, you go first. Rapid fire. We'll try to keep this definitely within 10 minutes here, but let's see what we can pack in.
Okay. My first one is going to be Helen, who is the founder of Blender Bombs, and she was on a panel with Ron from Obvi and Megan from Wandering Bear. And the topic was essentially around what do we do in this new age of targeting and acquiring new customers? And Helen, it was funny. She got on the stage. She's like, hey, just so you know, I know nothing about digital marketing and Facebook, but I'm really good at influencer marketing and audience building. So she shared what an audience can do for just building a business. She was referencing friends that, don't quote me on this, but they have 50,000 followers to 500,000 followers, and the scale of business that they were able to just spin off of that audience from 10 million to, I don't know, 50 plus million businesses, 50 million plus a year businesses. They're talking about acquiring new customers. So Megan was sharing some experiences around what they're doing in Facebook and video advertising. And Helen, she shared, well, actually, we have this new Bombco smoothie bar that they are franchising out and putting the products, so putting the Blender Bombs, which are smoothie add-ons, putting the Blender Bombs in these smoothie bars, and they're built into the smoothies. And that's the distribution strategy or one of the distribution strategies of, hey, we're just going to have a bunch of physical locations, but our product is going to be in there front and center. So anyone who comes in there, if they're buying a smoothie, they're going to taste it, but it's also going to be a built-in retail store. So I thought that was a very much a yang from a digital marketing event where we're talking a lot about Facebook and TikTok and all of that. That was a brick and mortar new customer acquisition strategy. So I thought that was really unique and interesting.
Yeah, I had a number of conversations, and my day to day right now is in the real estate world, and all I'm hearing from other agents and things of that nature is like, man, commercial real estate is just dying. There's not a lot of demand there. There's this whole protest culture where, folks are just coming in and, taking your inventory and there's no recourse. So that's pulling a lot of folks away from retail because they can't secure their stores. And I had a conversation with someone who's very involved in the PE world, and they were saying that no, retail is for sure coming back, and it's this huge validator. So it's like a step much higher than if you can afford a billboard on the side of the interstate. If you can afford a retail location, people know your brand is legitimate, and it's like a whole nother level of customer success where people know, like, okay, if I can get them to take my calls on this 1-800 number, I'm gonna be able to just walk into this store and get some kind of customer support with a human being. So
Yeah.
the power of retail was definitely something I took away from the event, and that's very encouraging to me from the real estate side as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And I won't remember the exacts, but there's something else that Helen shared about, again, because she has a fairly large audience on Instagram, but she shared the structure, so the problem and hook for what makes a good video. And then she's like, yeah, if you just want to go see what videos go viral, she said, just go to your For You on Instagram, somehow filter and look for the ones that have the most shares and just essentially try to recreate those. So if you're really interested in that, just you can go to our YouTube channel. We'll likely have that cut up at some point, the Elevar YouTube channel. But yeah, it's just like there's a bunch of dense information and knowledge there of influencer marketing and the benefits of it. And her videos, the whole smoothie bar is a healthier Smoothie King. And I think she does the undercover videos of going in a Smoothie King and looking at buying a smoothie and like, oh, what's really in this? It's 100 grams of sugar and it's, blah, 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 this bunch of stuff that's unhealthy, and using that as a position or anchor to the healthier smoothie version. So what was your first takeaway or one of your best takeaways from the summit?
Yeah, it's funny. Our whole conversation so far has been based around my two pillars were around the power of audience and the power of personalization, or the necessity for personalization. And if you just kept double clicking into those two terms, you would, in my opinion, open up all of the presentations. I don't know if that was intentional from you, but the how to create videos that make money, the frameworks they talked about, where you got the problem solving framework. I mean, I literally have that slide up right now, and I'm looking at that, and not just from a video and your single ad creation process, but from your entire communication strategy. How is your customer, your ideal customer, what is their problem? How are you going to speak to that? How does your product step right into that void? And how have thousands, 10,000s of people or other scientists found that your particular product is going to solve that problem? And then how do you overcome the hurdles of the risk that they feel at that moment of decision? So in your call to action, how are you going to de-risk that? So what if your product doesn't work? Are you going to do a refund? I know Elevar, you guys give a 30-day back guarantee. With my hotels, if someone comes and they hate it, what is our recourse going to be? And so that was a huge piece for me. And the power of influencers, even getting back to Taylor's presentation about, there's 97% less VC funding in the economy right now. Capital cost 195% more. So if you can't get money and you can afford to borrow money, then what are you going to do in order to have your brand survive? So you better be generating profitability. Influencer-led advertising is the key to doing that if you're a D2C brand. So that was a big takeaway for me. And Helen, she said her brand was initially built on that because they could go straight to her audience, and she's already built up that trust, and they had such great ROI on that, then they can afford to bring in other inventory to keep meeting the demand, and they didn't have these like delays in their supply chain. So that was a huge connecting point for me. Was you either need to be building an audience or finding a blue ocean.
Yeah, that's a good summary. That was Brandon from Javi Coffee, one of the co-founders of Javi Coffee, and Tyler. I think it was Brandon who shared, if you want to see what makes, like, what a great video ad is, just go Google as seen on TV and just go look at those products, find the products, and find the product videos and landing pages for those. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he basically said, yeah, that style works. That is literally the style that works the best for a lot of brands when you are everything on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, etc. And I actually, thinking about Elevar, we are all people. We buy software and we buy shirts and skincare and all that. So to me, that is very much the we the same advertising, even though we're talking in the D2C focused world, that can apply and should apply to software and services. So this is the framework that Nate has pulled up. Yeah, it's the hook, and then you mentioned at the end the desired end result and giving them the money back guarantee, the reducing that, oh, what happens if I don't like it? So this applies to everyone in my eyes.
Yeah, that was a great presentation. I think overall, Taylor, because at the end of the day, if you run a business, you've got to be profitable or you've got to have your cash flow managed, and you've got to find a way to adapt your model, advertising included, in order to have that profitability, in order just to continue growing and stacking bricks, so you move towards the future. And Helen talked about that as well. When she was early on, she had this day one audience that allowed her to have such better margins that they were immediately profitable. And of course, she spent years getting to
Yeah.
that point to have an audience that trusted her. So that is the benefit of having this content effort you're making right now that you may feel like is a waste of time. 5 years from now, that's going to be gold, because you're going to have a captive audience that trusts you, that you can speak directly to for free. Then Taylor just kept bringing that back to the P&L. Your creative direction is going to be guided by this P&L. And I like to have that, like a P&L led company versus, let's just go do what we think is cool, and then we'll just figure out how the financing works on the back end. That doesn't play anymore in 2024. So that really created a great frame for me, and different buckets that I could drop these other presentations into. The Vermont guys, when they were talking about the brand advertising, North Face, they've got a 30-minute brand video. So they're not spending so much time talking about the features on their jacket. They're making sure that you fall in love with their brand and you just want their products more than anybody else. So
It was a video ad. It was like a 30-second video ad that linked to the 30-minute YouTube video.
right from their website.
Yeah, so they're running, it was a Facebook ad, so Facebook, Instagram ad, or YouTube ad, whatever it was. But instead of linking to the website, they were linking to the YouTube video, the long YouTube video off site. So
Yes.
it was, I would imagine most people were like, that is crazy. I've never heard of that you were paying money to drive them to, a medium that is not your website where they can go buy. And that's brand. Like that was brand advertising, which was another big common theme.
Yeah. So, as I was driving back home after the event, just kind of processing, if you have a D2C brand or a product that is not one of one, then you've got to either become your own influencer and build your audience, find an influencer. It's going to, they kept saying that influencer advertising has the best LTV and better conversion day one. I didn't realize that influencers were that powerful. Or make sure that your brand is so unique that when you make a product, like North Face is not the only company making jackets, but for some reason, if the North Face jacket is the only one that someone wants, then you've done a great job branding. So, either build that audience or find a blue ocean, because I thought about that as well. Like skilled manual laborers around me, plumbers, landscapers, like I don't see those guys bend over backwards to try to find customers, because there's just not a lot of competition. There's not a lot of people doing that. Software for Elevar, the keynote you and Philip had, like the capabilities that Buxton and Elevar combined are going to offer here in the next few months, whenever y'all roll out all those features, that was mind blowing. So y'all are going to have a pretty large moat for that.
Let's do let's more rapid fire. One more like quick rapid fire learning lesson.
All right,
Do you want me to go or you go?
you go. I just went on a rant there.
All right, I'm going to keep this one quick. Going back to Taylor, the Common Thread Collective, historically they were an agency focused on marketing, so managing Facebook ads, Google ads, etc. And very big. They're a very big agency. And Taylor he realized that he had the 4-quarter framework. Quarter number one is your marketing, basically like your CAC. So what's your return on spend? And quarter number two, I think, was inventory, OpEx, etc. So I think he pivoted the business, maybe not literally, but instead of just focusing on, hey, we're going to help you get a better return on ad spend, it was like, wow, well, brands are hiring us to help them make more money and improve profitability. But he realized, hey, we we can only impact this very small sliver of the overall business. We need to get significantly better at the other 75%. So now they've transitioned their agency, and he had the spreadsheet and everything they shared around the all 4 quarters of, hey, if you're going to measure my results on increasing revenue and profitability, then we need to be able to help with these other aspects of the business. So that was a very interesting, staying close to the customer and not getting stuck in what you used to do, but as changes happen in the world and the macroeconomic world, being okay with making adjustments to your business, even if you are already at significant scale. So that one was really wild to see up front.
Yeah. His presentation for me just kind of set the frame that I could set the others in for the whole summit. So I loved it. Cannot believe we haven't said Gene's name this entire time.
I was gonna do the Gene AI one, but I figured that might be a little bit too abstract for a podcast. But maybe I want to share one quick thing on that. So yes, Common Thread, they're still helping. By the way, Common Thread didn't pay us for this podcast. They're not sponsoring it, but yes, they're still doing marketing. But you might be wondering, well, how can they impact inventory or OpEx since they have experience? So now they're helping coach their customers. Hey, did you know you can go renegotiate terms with your manufacturer, get 60-day, 90-day, whatever it is. Your OpEx. Hey, let's look at what are your expenses. So how much are you paying for your team? How much are there any areas in your operating expenses that you should look at reducing? Those are the conversations. That's the muscle they had to build to go in and be essentially a full stack consultant for e-com brands. And now I'm thinking of that, I don't think that exists for SaaS. So I'm sure that'll come out someday. Yeah. All right. What do you got? What's your last one?
Last one here. Lesson. This is a personal one, and I'll say something very brief, and maybe you can elaborate. But I think my beliefs about Meta and Google advertising have been naive up until this point. I've been very proud that we've never spent $1 over the course of the first 3 years of operating these hotels. We have a much higher than average on-site booking percentage. As I was listening to all these different brands and the data you can gather from Meta and Google advertising, I think I'm going to pursue learning how to do that, and I'm going to start rolling out some of those advertisements at these hotels, even if we're already growing 20% year over year. Till we're at 100% occupancy, I'm not willing to accept that as my job is done.
All right. Sounds like you need to find a who, not a how for that one.
I already wrote that down at the top of this notepad.
Yeah, I would hook up, I'd stand over his shoulder and just watch you try to log into a business manager, Facebook business manager.
Yeah. It definitely seems like that's a task I'm going to outsource, but I definitely want to learn it at the very least because every brand's using it and they're growing because of it.
Yeah, even I was in Google Ads the other day, and it seems like their interface changes. And if you go to 2 different accounts, you'll have 2 different UIs. I was in there. I was like, I can't find this thing anymore. I can't find this audience. I was trying to do some audience reporting. I couldn't find it, so I'd ask John for help. All right, this has been a long one on events, and hopefully it was helpful. Anything before we wrap up?
I got nothing else, man. Great job, great event. Definitely looking forward to Elevar Summit number 3.
Alrighty. Reminder, if you found this helpful, ask me questions, but also share it out with other founders or operators that you think might be helpful, or future founders as well. So share it out, and we'd appreciate it.
I can't take no loss. I don't even know what it costs. I hit the ground, then I go